Imagine this. You are standing at the foot of a mountain. Not a mountain of rock and snow, but a mountain of days. An endless steep slope of mornings, afternoons, and evenings, all leading to the same predictable summit, the end. You place your hands on the first boulder of your life, your first memory, your first job, your first love, and you begin to push. You push it up the slope, your muscles straining, your breath ragged. You push it through the routines of Monday, the distractions of Tuesday, the fatigue of Wednesday, the brief respite of the weekend, and then you look up and see Monday again, waiting for you at the bottom. The boulder rolls back down. So you descend, and you push it up again, and again, and again. This is the human condition, as Albert Camus, a philosopher and novelist living in Nazi-occupied France, saw it. It is not a metaphor for a harsh punishment in the underworld. It is a precise, unflinching description of your waking life. You wake up, you go to work, you eat, you feel the rush of connection, you endure the slow creep of boredom, you return home, you sleep, and then you do it again, for years. The scenery changes, the boulders get painted with different ambitions, a promotion, a relationship, a vacation, a new possession, but the structure remains. The ascent is familiar, the summit is never permanent, and the descent is inevitable. Most of the time, you don't notice. The momentum of the push carries you. The rhythm of the struggle numbs you. But then, one day, the question arrives. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It slips in quietly, perhaps in the pause between a movie ending and you turning off the TV, or in the silence of a traffic jam, or in the middle of a conversation you're no longer listening to. It whispers, "Why? Why am I doing this? Why all this effort? Why this relentless push towards a future that, in the grand, silent indifference of the universe, will eventually erase every trace of the climb?" Camus calls this moment the absurd. It is not a theory. It is a collision. It is the confrontation between your deep, human need for clarity, for meaning, for a reason that makes it all worth it, and the universe's complete, total, and terrifying silence in response. You scream, "What is the point?" And the world answers only with the wind. You look for a cosmic script, a divine plan, a moral arc to the story, and you find only the raw, unfiltered fact of your own existence and the certainty of its end. This collision is the central problem of the 20th century's most urgent philosophical text. It is the locked door at the back of your mind. You can pretend it isn't there. You can throw yourself into work or pleasure to drown out the whisper. Or you can stand before it, trembling, and ask the question the book forces you to ask. When you know, with absolute certainty, that the boulder will always roll back down, when the promise of a final, glorious summit is revealed as a lie, how do you keep pushing? How do you not walk off the mountain in despair? The book's answer is not a solution, but a rebellion. It is a single, impossible, electrifying command that will turn your entire world upside down. You must imagine Sisyphus happy. But to understand why, you must first understand the depth of his and your despair. If this collision between your search for meaning and the universe's silence struck something deep in you, hit subscribe now. We release a new philosophical deep dive every week that will trouble your sleep and awaken your mind. You wake up tomorrow, and the alarm is not just an alarm. It's a tiny death, a signal that another climb has begun. You go through the motions: coffee, commute, emails, meetings, conversations that feel like reading lines from a script you didn't write. And somewhere between the second cup of coffee and the third hour of manufactured urgency, the feeling creeps back. Not sadness, not anger, something colder. A sense that the scenery is changing, but the play is the same. That you're not really living your life, you're just occupying it. This is the moment Camus is obsessed with. Not the grand tragedies of life, but its dull, repetitive machinery. He argues that the absurd doesn't erupt from poverty or suffering or loss. It erupts from routine, from the slow, grinding normalcy of it all. Because routine is where expectation meets reality most violently. You expect each day to mean something. You expect your effort to accumulate into something permanent. You expect love, work, and leisure to add up to a life that matters. But the universe doesn't cooperate. It just offers you another Tuesday. Camus calls this the divorce between the mind that craves unity and the world that offers only fragments. And here's the hidden problem he diagnoses. Most people never file for this divorce. They stay married to a lie. They pretend the silence is actually a voice. They invent meaning where none exists. They project purpose onto the blank screen of existence and then forget they were the ones projecting. He identifies 3 escape routes from this confrontation, and you've likely taken all of them. The first is physical escape, distraction. You drown the question in noise. You scroll, you consume, you acquire, you chase. You fill the silence with so much motion that the whisper can't reach you. It works until it doesn't. The second is psychological escape, hope. You defer meaning to tomorrow. You tell yourself that once you achieve X, once you reach Y, once you find Z, the boulder will finally stay at the summit. This is the trap of the future. You mortgage the present for a payoff that never arrives, because the summit, by its nature, is temporary. The third is philosophical escape, faith. You accept a ready-made meaning from outside. Religion, ideology, political certainty, spiritual frameworks that promise the universe actually has a plan, and you're part of it. This is the most seductive escape because it feels like homecoming. But Camus calls it philosophical. You're not solving the absurd. You're leaping over it. You're killing the question instead of living with it. And here is where the diagnosis cuts deepest. The problem isn't that the world is meaningless. The problem is that you keep expecting it to be meaningful in the way you need it to be. The universe isn't malicious. It isn't cruel. It's simply indifferent. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't love you. It doesn't know you exist. And that indifference, when you truly feel it, feels like abandonment. This is the hidden problem Camus exposes. You've been asking the wrong question. You've been asking, what is the meaning of life? As if meaning were a buried treasure waiting to be found. But the treasure was never buried. The map was blank. And the real question, the one that terrifies you, is not whether life has meaning, but whether you can live fully in a world that offers you none. Look around you, not at the room, but at the world it sits inside. The structures you navigate every day, the 9 to 5, the mortgage, the retirement plan, the political loyalties, the religious certainties, the endless pursuit of more. What if they aren't solutions to the absurd? What if they're symptoms of it? This is Camus' most unsettling insight. The problem isn't just personal, it's civilizational. The absurd doesn't just haunt your private midnight thoughts. It shapes the architecture of everything humans build. Because when you cannot face the silence, you will do anything to fill it with noise. And that noise becomes culture. Consider the first consequence, the cult of the future. You live in a society utterly possessed by tomorrow. Every advertisement, every political promise, every career ladder, every savings account whispers the same lie. That meaning is a destination. That if you just endure enough todays, you'll finally arrive at a tomorrow that matters. But watch what this does to you. It makes the present perpetually provisional. Your life becomes a waiting room. You're always becoming, never being. You're always en route, never arrived. And the absurd truth is that the destination doesn't exist. There is only the waiting. The second consequence, the obsession with productivity. If you cannot answer the question, why live? You can at least answer the question, what to do? So you fill your days with measurable output. You equate busyness with purpose. You mistake motion for direction. Camus saw this clearly. A society that cannot confront the meaninglessness of existence will compensate by fetishizing efficiency. You don't ask if your work matters. You ask if you're working enough. You don't question the goal. You optimize the path, and in doing so, you become the boulder, endlessly pushed, never arriving, but at least too exhausted to ask why. The third consequence is the most dangerous, the leap into certainty. When the silence becomes unbearable, you will embrace any voice that promises to break it. This is why ideologies thrive. This is why tribalism intensifies. This is why people surrender their minds to political movements, religious dogmas, and conspiracy theories with religious fervor. Not because these systems are true, but because they're loud. They offer answers. They replace the terrifying question mark of existence with an exclamation point. And Camus warns you with brutal clarity. This is not faith. It is fear dressed as faith. It is disguised as salvation. Look at the consequences in your own life, the anxiety that hums beneath your calm, the restlessness that follows achievement, the emptiness that lingers after pleasure, the way success feels like relief instead of joy, the way failure feels like confirmation instead of lesson. These aren't personal failings. They're the natural results of living in a world that promised you meaning and delivered only repetition. Camus isn't describing a problem you can fix. He's describing a condition you can only face. And the stakes are absolute, because if you keep taking the escape routes, distraction, hope, faith, you'll never actually live. You'll just survive, waiting for a meaning that will never arrive, serving a future that will never come, believing in certainties that collapse the moment you examine them. The world shaped by the absurd is a world of sleepwalkers. People moving, achieving, consuming, believing, but never waking. And waking, Camus is about to show you, is not comfort. It is not peace. It is something far more terrifying and far more alive. Drop a comment telling us, when did you first feel the weight of the absurd? That moment, the routine broke and the question, why, slipped through. And if you want to keep waking up with us, smash that like button and subscribe. So here you are, awake. The silence is no longer filled with noise. The future no longer promises salvation. The certainties have crumbled, and you're standing at the bottom of the mountain, hands on the boulder, knowing it will roll back down. Now what? Camus' answer arrives like a blade. It is not hope. It is not resignation. It is rebellion. He introduces you to Sisyphus, not as a cautionary tale, but as a hero. In Greek myth, Sisyphus was punished by the gods for his cunning, his eternal task, pushing a rock up a mountain, watching it fall, and descending to begin again. The gods believed there is no punishment more terrible than futile and hopeless labor. They were wrong. Camus sees what the gods missed. The tragedy isn't the task. The tragedy is the hope that the task might end. And Sisyphus, at the moment of descent, knows the truth. He knows the rock will fall. He knows tomorrow will be identical to today. He knows there is no summit that lasts. And in that knowing, he becomes free. This is the prescription. Not escape, but lucidity. Not denial, but clear-eyed acceptance. Camus tells you that the absurd does not command you to die. It commands you to live fully, fiercely, without consolation. The path to resolution is not solving the absurd. It's making it the very fuel of your existence. 3 principles emerge from this rebellion. First, refusal of hope. This sounds bleak, but it's actually liberation. Hope is the chain that binds you to a future that doesn't exist. Hope tells you that meaning is coming, so endure. Hope makes the present a sacrifice to tomorrow. Camus asks you to kill hope, not in despair, but in defiance. When you stop hoping for the boulder to stay, you stop suffering the fall. The descent becomes just another part of the climb. You're no longer waiting. You're living. Second, refusal of false unity. You will be tempted to impose meaning where none exists, to join the ideology, to adopt the dogma, to pretend the silence is actually speaking. Camus calls this treason. The absurd person refuses to lie to themselves. They accept that the world has no inherent meaning, and they choose to live without apology in that truth. This is nihilism. Nihilism says nothing matters, so nothing is worth doing. Absurdism says nothing matters, so everything is worth doing, on your own terms, with your own values, in your own time. Third, passionate engagement. Here is the paradox Camus hands you. Because life has no ultimate meaning, every moment becomes infinitely precious. Because no tomorrow guarantees fulfillment, today must contain its own. You don't live for the summit. You live for the push, the strain of muscles, the warmth of sun on skin, the companionship of fellow climbers, the taste of water after effort. These aren't distractions from meaning. They are meaning. Not cosmic meaning, but human meaning. Small, fleeting, real. Camus offers you the image of Sisyphus walking back down the mountain. The punishment is over for the day. The gods aren't watching. And in that space between descents, Sisyphus owns his fate. His fate belongs to him. The rock is his. The mountain is his. The struggle is his. And in that ownership, Camus delivers his final, shattering line. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, not despite the struggle. Because of it, you are standing at the bottom of the mountain. The boulder waits. The sun is setting. Tomorrow, you will push it up again, and you are smiling. This is the image Camus leaves seared into your mind. Not a man defeated by his punishment, but a man who has made the punishment his own. Not a victim of the gods, but their equal. Because here is the ultimate truth the book has been guarding. The moment you stop hoping for the boulder to stay, you stop being a slave to the mountain. Think about what actually imprisons you. It's not the repetition. It's the resistance to repetition. It's the constant, exhausting war between what is and what you demand should be. You suffer not because you push, but because you push while believing you deserve to stop. You suffer not because life is absurd, but because you keep expecting it to be reasonable. The absurd isn't the enemy. Your expectation that the absurd shouldn't exist, that's the enemy. Camus walks you to a precipice and asks you to look down. Below is not hell. Below is freedom. The freedom of the prisoner who stops dreaming of escape and starts living inside his cell. The freedom of the worker who stops living for Friday and starts living in Monday. The freedom of the human who stops begging the universe for a sign and starts breathing the air as if it's enough, because it is. This is not resignation. Resignation is slumped shoulders. This is straight-backed embrace. Sisyphus doesn't trudge down the mountain. He strides. He owns the descent. He knows something the gods don't, that the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, not the arrival, the struggle, the push, the sweat, the texture of the rock, the rhythm of breath, the feel of ground underfoot. These are not substitutes for meaning. They are meaning itself, stripped of illusion, raw and real, and finally yours. Look at what this does to your life. The job you do becomes not a means to an end, but an end in itself, if you choose to see it that way. The relationship you're in becomes not a step towards some perfected love, but a living thing to be experienced now. The day you're in becomes not a bridge to a better tomorrow, but a country to be explored. You stop living on credit. You stop mortgaging the present. You stop asking what it all means and start asking how deeply you can feel it. Camus offers you no consolation. He offers you something harder and greater, clarity. The world remains silent. The boulder still falls. The mountain still stands. But you are no longer its victim. You are its inhabitant. You have made peace not with the gods, but with the ground beneath your feet. And this is why you must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not because his fate has changed, because he has. He no longer pushes the rock for the gods. He pushes it for himself. The punishment has become his purpose. The curse has become his calling. And in that transformation, the entire universe shifts. The book ends where you begin. Standing at the bottom of your own mountain, hands on your own boulder, looking up at your own impossible slope. The question isn't whether the rock will stay. It won't. The question isn't whether the universe will answer. It can't. The only question is whether you will push as if pushing is enough. Camus bets you will. Not because you're hopeful, because you're alive. And being alive in a world without appeal is its own rebellion, its own victory, its own impossible, radiant joy. Now close the book. The mountain is waiting.